Thank you for listening to We Have Ways of Making You Talk. Sign up to our Patreon to receive bonus content, live streams, and our weekly newsletter with money off books and museum visits as well, plus early access to all live show tickets. That's patreon.com/wehaveways.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. I don't know if you knew this, but anyone can get the same premium wireless for $15 a month plan that I've been enjoying. It's not just for celebrities. So do like I did and have one of your assistants switch you to Mint Mobile today. I'm told it's super easy to do at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Acura's all-new ADX, a compact SUV that isn't just built for one thing. It's precision crafted for everything. To escape the grind with available all-wheel drive. To go with your flow with available Google built-in.
Hey Google, turn it up.
Okay, turning up the volume. And crafted to be heard with an available Bang & Olufsen premium sound system. The all-new Acura ADX, crafted to match your energy. Acura, precision crafted performance.
Take your vibes and go.
Google is a trademark of Google LLC.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Fiscally responsible, financial geniuses, monetary magicians. These are things people say about drivers who switch their car insurance to Progressive and save hundreds. Visit Progressive.com to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary, not available in all states or situations.
'21st Army Group will now cross the Rhine. The enemy possibly thinks he is safe behind this great river obstacle. We all agree that it is a great obstacle, but we will show the enemy that he is far from safe behind it. This great Allied fighting machine, composed of integrated land and air forces, will deal with the problem in no uncertain manner. And having crossed the Rhine, we will crack about it in the...
Keep going.
And having crossed the Rhine, we will crack about it in the plains of northern Germany, chasing the enemy from pillar to post. The swifter and more energetic our action, the sooner the war will be over, and that is what we all desire. Get on with the job and finish off the German war as soon as possible. Over the Rhine, then, let us go, and good hunting to you on the other side.
And that of course, was Field Marshal Sir Bernard Montgomery.
Yes.
It's almost like he was in the room. I don't know, the only person who's not wanting the war to be over is him, isn't it?
Well, I think, I'm afraid you're right, you know. I think
he's frightfully boring afterwards.
He's sort of looking at a cliff edge.
It's an interesting battle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a most interesting battle. He's looking at a cliff edge, isn't he, really? He's achieved everything he could possibly hope to in his career, I suppose, apart from going to Berlin. But welcome to We Have Ways of Making You Talk with me, Al Murray, James Holland, Second World War podcast. And this is our Victory in Europe series where we're taking you to the end of the war, or trying to, at least.
Yes. It's finally all about to be over.
In the last episode, we dealt with the bridge of Remagen, whatever we want to call it, and the absolutely extraordinary story of the Americans getting over the River Rhine and then
not really knowing what to do.
So I've been thinking about that whole thing ever since, Jim. 80 years historiography. You leave that to simmer on the pot, and it's all about, it's cautious Montgomery and flash and Americans who can grab a moment and create a moment to grab one. But here's an instance where they create a moment, decide, don't know about that.
I don't know, I will grab it because it goes against our strategy. It goes against our strategy. It turns out it wasn't Monty all along.
Yeah, it wasn't Monty.
It was the Americans who were being cautious. I mean, and ponderous and wanting to kind of all come up together and attack on a broad front. And if you look back at it again, Monty's the one who was all going single for us, single for us, single for us. Let's go for it. Yeah. All behind me, boys. So it is really interesting, and it is fascinating how much that myth has persisted again by, Patton's gloating, which we're going to get to in a minute, and post-war memoirs, which are very unreliable. We know that Chet Hansen, wrote 2 of Bradley's autobiographies, and they were both kind of, changed with the changing times.
Why bother change your story? I mean,
well, because a myth has already started to emerge, and it's all tied up with the generals at war, post-war, after Monty's memoirs. So, aggrandizing, self-serving memoirs. And it's also tied up with the fact that America has emerged as a kind of preeminent state, preeminent nation, and Britain is much declined. And, this is we've talked about declinism and where this all comes from. And it's from them. It doesn't matter what Britain's like in the 1970s or in 1976 at its IMF moment, or it doesn't really matter what it's like right now. It's what it was like in the 1940s, and it was a different beast then. Britain is diminished by 6 years of war, but it's still a major player, and no one can take that away from it. As we will discover, this episode is it may change, but right now we've called it Third Army and Operation Plunder.
But like all of this, everything's connected but not connected. Because I think what's interesting is there is latitude, leeway for people to jump across the Rhine if they get the chance.
But there are very good reasons, as discussed yesterday, not to do that.
So Third Army is now enormous. It's 320,000 strong. From mid-March, they forged their way across the Saarland and the Palatinate. I was just going to say, the Palatinate is something you read about, but maybe on a map you go, it's somewhere around there. I mean, it's
the West Rhineland.
Yes, this is old patchwork quilt Germany. Names of old bits of patchwork quilt Germany, really, isn't it? They reached the Rhine by the 22nd of March, and they've taken 90,000 people into the bag, POWs, in the process. And the Rhine, of all the times to get to the Rhine, after one of the cold winters of the Second World War, I think it's fair to say.
Well, they were notoriously cold, also notoriously wet.
Yes,
particularly the wrong side. Well, first of all, you have a huge amount of rain in the autumn. Then you have a big dollop of snow, and the snow melts, and so the amount of rain, amount of water, the water levels in the Rhine are considerable, and that obviously increases the flow of it. So 7.3 feet per second.
The thing is, and this Third Army, of course, is Patton. This sounds like they're being opportunistic, but Patton has been planning this up to the eyeballs, hasn't he?
He was planning to do it months earlier. So he's been planning this since October.
And the thing to remember is, you might know Patton for his sort of tactical flair, but you can only do that if you've got your operational art in order.
Yeah, and we've had a conversation about Patton. I think, from an operational level, I think that actually is his greatest strength. Because when you see him in Southern Tunisia, he's pretty raw. For all his sort of, chest thumping and kind of, garrulousness and all the rest of it.
A lot of which he's done for the press. It's very much styled to the press for the press's
but he's gung-ho and wanting to get at the Hun and all that kind of stuff. But actually, he's pretty raw, and Alexander changes his orders to him 6 times to keep him on a pretty tight lead. Yeah. And he doesn't understand air power at all. Not at all. He has that huge spat with Mary Cunningham. They kiss and make up. But Patton, credit where credit due, he learns those lessons really, really quickly and really proves what a strong operational commander he is in Sicily, where he has to do that big sweep to the west and clear western half of the island. He just does it so brilliantly. Again, with the help of amazing people around him, it has to be said.
Yeah, he's got incredible staff.
But he's really good. And ever since then, he's absolutely nailed it.
Yeah.
The complete general is a general who gets the strategic overview, is tactically very strong, but has an incredibly strong operational grasp. Yeah. And that's why there's sort of problems with Rommel, because Rommel learns as well. None of these people stand still. If they do, they fall by the wayside. But Patton is I think an exceptionally good commander by this stage.
Anyway, they're getting ready to go. His chief artillery officer is Colonel Edward T. Marley Williams, and he's created a Third Army Troop Carrier Command, which is all the artillery spotters pulled together. And the idea is they're going to ferry a battalion across the river in about 90 minutes. And on the 21st of March, the idea is that's what they're going to do as a rehearsal. And they've got Higgins boats because I think it's interesting because I think well known that the Royal Navy are involved in the Rhine crossing, but the fact that you actually have the US Navy and Coast Guard personnel with 24 Higgins boats here is fascinating.
Yeah, isn't it?
They're seeing it the same way. That it's the same problem.
Well, it is because they've come over the previous autumn, the previous fall, and they've been transported by tank prime movers. So, they do have these huge, great low loaders on which they carry tanks around, and they've just put the Higgins boats on those and carried them across country.
God, isn't that amazing?
Yes, it's absolutely amazing. And on top of that, they've got a further 54 LCMs, which are landing craft mechanized, which are sort of, these are the kind of newer, shinier versions of the Higgins boats. One of these units was used at Remagen and had ferried 2,200 troops in 3 hours. I mean, across besides the Rhine, that is pretty good. So on the 19th of March, Bradley says, yeah, okay, great, go for it. Third Army, Patton, George, go for it. Same day, Third Army captures 17,000 POWs. So that dwarfs the loss of the 2 regiments of the 106th Division back in December. Do you remember when they were hit? And they were the 422nd and the 423rd Infantry Regiments of the 106th up on the the wooded hill near Schöneberg.
Yes, Kurt Vonnegut.
All of that. Crew. So there is a real sense that momentum is with them. They've got all the gear. They've now got all the ideas as well. Yeah. They're surging towards the Rhine. And that's great. But one of the things about Patton is he's always deeply competitive. He's always got to be first. He's got to be the best. If not, then America. And this is a whole non-existent race for Messina nonsense that happened in Sicily and all the rest of it. But, if that's what ticks his boat and motivates him, then who cares? Well,
and is he doing it so that it's his guys do it as well? It's like
he's sort of instilling pride, isn't he?
Yes, generates need to radiate confidence and all that, and he's turned that on basically.
Yeah, I mean, for those veterans that I've interviewed who did serve under Patton, a lot of them said, it's all well and good, but it was our blood he was doing this with.
Yes, it's our guts, his glory.
He's determined to get across the Rhine before Monty, which was still, in terms of strategic priority, the main effort. And Bradley, who was also kind of, as we were discussing yesterday, slightly sort of emerged from his torpor as well. He's also smarting from the bulge and the fact that he got isolated in Luxembourg City and lost First Army for a bit. And he felt that Ike was sort of favouring Monty over him and all the rest of it. And, we know that Bradley is can be curmudgeonly and also can be kind of waspish and and a little bit kind of toys out of pramish.
I mean, I think also the factor is here, the end is coming and people want their thumbprints all over the end.
Knowing, very conscious that Ike is now, Eisenhower is who is obviously the Supreme Allied Commander, is running the show much more authoritatively from a kind of field command point of view rather than just an administrative point of view, deliberately gives Patton the go-ahead without telling Schaeff.
Oh, for God's sake.
It's ridiculous, isn't it? Anyway, the US 5th Division is at the Rhine, but it is expecting to have a well-earned rest because that's the strategy, that you pause, take a beat, wait for everyone to catch up and then go for it. But instead, on the 22nd of March, planning conferences hold and Patton tells his commanders they're now going to get across the Rhine PDQ. Shall I do this one?
Yeah, go on. I want to hear. Now, I've offered my Monty. I want to hear your Patton.
Yeah. We've got to get to the bridgehead. Every day we save, doing that means saving hundreds of American lives. The Germans are smashed and in chaos now on our front. If we delay 72 hours from now, they will have reorganized. We must not give them that chance. And I don't give a goddamn what other plans there may be. I don't propose to give the sons of a bitches a chance to recover from the killing we gave them in the Palatinate. We're going to make the crossing immediately. I don't care where or how we get the necessary equipment, but get it, steal it, beg it, or make it. We're going to get it across the Rhine and we're going to do it today. And of course, this suggests that they've got to somehow kind of, rustle around and gather all the kit. When he's saying, I don't care where we get the kit from, he's saying that to 5th Division, but he's got all the kit.
He's got all the kit. Yes, go and get it from the depot, chaps.
Go and get it from the depot. That's what he means. He doesn't mean I'm going to defy money and do my own thing. He's already got all that stuff.
Yes, I mean Patton when he's like this is his own rhetorical creation. Is the point? It's a lot. So much of this is for public consumption. I read a thing not that long ago about how a great deal of how American generals presented themselves in the 30s before the war is to do with American business culture. Tycoon boss who's leading the way, by personality and drive. I'm going to whip this company into shape, and that is very much the sort of where what Patton was drawing on or keeping an eye on during the 30s. And all of
Isn't that interesting? Absolutely, make no mistake. anyone listening to this. This is not a thrown together operation, but very carefully planned. So let's just go back to that a little bit.
Yep.
So a little bit of recap for Third Army's preparation. So these have begun the previous October in 1944. And the key figure here is Brigadier General John F. Conklin, who is the chief engineer of Third Army. And in October 1944, he establishes a training school for all units who are going to be involved in the Rhine crossing. So each engineer battalion and Third Army spends 3 days training with bridging equipment. And then they're also given 1 to 10,000 scale models of various crossing points. And they also then further do training throughout that time after the training school. An engineer depot is set up in Moselle. So this is exactly where they're going to get all the bridging equipment. So all the bridging equipment is built up and prepared. And by March 1945, just remember that last quote from Patton. Yeah. I don't care where or how we get it, steal it, beg it, or make it. We're going to get across the Rhine and do it today. What he has in the Third Army arsenal,
this is ridiculous.
By the beginning of March, not by the 22nd of March, by the beginning of March, 1,500 assault boats, 300 storm boats, 15,000 paddles, 910 outboard motors, 11,000 feet of treadway, 7,000 feet of Bailey bridging, British, by the way, just saying, 2,200 feet of pontoon bridging. Routes have already been worked out and planned. Why routes are important is because you need to work out what convoy of equipment is going to go where and when and what route it's going to do so you don't have a huge jam. So you need multiple routes. So, if you were to put into your Google Maps, it might take you on one route, but you have to ignore Google Maps because you need one route for one bit and another route for another bit and another route for another bit, and they're not all going to be exactly the same. And one might be, on Google Maps you get three options, and one takes 1 hour 43 minutes, and the other one takes 1 hour 47. Well, it's kind of like that. This has already been worked out beforehand.
Well, 7,000 feet of Bailey bridges is hundreds and hundreds of trucks. It isn't as though going across the River Rhine is manslaughter, it's premeditated murder.
Yes, exactly that. And there are lots and lots of sappers to do this bridging work to help clear roads and make sure it all goes fine. So just in 12 Corps, the 1135th Engineer Combat Group totals 7,000 men.
Wow.
That is a full strength brigade. Yeah,
that's extraordinary.
So then, back on the 10th of December 1944, so just before the Battle of the Bulge, Third Army and the US Navy staff have a joint conference at Third Army headquarters to discuss the Rhine crossings. Aerial photos are studied, crossing points agreed, ferry men and bridging allocated. Yeah. Detailed analysis of the area shows that the Nierstein-Oppenheim is the most favourable crossing stretch in the Third Army sector. So it's all been worked out 3 months earlier.
So it's not a hastily jumped seat of pants thing. It's very, very carefully worked, because it has to be very, very carefully worked out, because the Allies know that logistics is how you win wars.
So just I've got a very, very brief red herring for you, rabbit hole for you.
Go on.
So one of the things that I've been thinking about a lot since we were doing the Battle of the Bulge is, why is it that the Germans spend the whole time complaining about the state of the roads and the Americans never do?
That's a very, very, very good question.
When the Americans have got considerably more mechanization than the Germans can even dream of.
The Americans are bringing metalled roadway with them, and they could tread.
Well, they're bringing repairing kit with them. So when I was at Carlisle, and I was at the Army Heritage and Education Centre last week doing my research, I found a whole load of stuff about engineers, and they were all talking about repairing roads. They just repair them as they go.
Graders and stuff.
Graders, bulldozers, sand, scalpings, it all comes to. Yeah. So that's all factored in.
Well, of course
steamrollers, the whole shebang. It's such a given that no one really mentions it.
Anyway, so 12 Corps, they don't use their guns as support. They go for surprise, don't they? Even though their guns are stocked, ready, they can go if they want. 12 Corps and the US Navy haven't worked together before, but 5th Division had done 22 river crossings since arriving in Normandy. So they are familiar with
They know what they're about.
Procedure. So Third Army start crossing at 10:30 p.m. on the night of the 22nd of March.
Which, just so everyone knows, is 24 hours before the planned crossing of the Rhine in 21st Army sector. So he's 24 hours ahead of Monty.
And the first wave go across, calm, balmy, bright spring evening. First wave go across, and it's 1,000 feet wide, the river at this point. And they're using assault boats, ducks, and some DD tanks, DD Shermans of the 748th Tank Battalion. It's good to see the the funny's still going.
Yeah, so they're using these storm boats, which have 10 men. So they have 8 infantrymen and two engineers. And they've got a little, 55 horsepower outboard on.
And they get across. It's Lieutenant Irvin H. Jacobs and Lieutenant John A. Manow leading K Company, the 3rd Battalion of the 11th Infantry. And they get across. There are 7 Germans who surrender immediately. And then Companies I and L follow, and there's barely a shot fired, which is interesting, this, isn't it? So you don't need your big artillery barrage. And if there's only barely anyone there, upstream 700 yards, it's more difficult for A and B Company, the 1st Battalion of the 11th. They run into actual resistance, Panzerfaust machine guns as they beach. They lose some of their officers, so it's a bit sticky. And then a Staff Sergeant Foster Ferguson rallies the men. They break through.
There's great quote here from Private Edgar N. Valderrama of C Company. By the time my boat reached far side, our first sergeant, a young hillbilly from Tennessee, was standing on the levee with a little notebook in one hand and a flashlight in the other, taking roll call. I could see trace of bullets flying over his head and shoulders. The heavy artillery fire made me nervous enough to jump ship a few yards before we reached shore. I didn't want to be branded a coward, so instead of dashing for cover, I heroically yanked the boat the last few feet ashore and then dashed for cover.
Very good. I mean, it's all there, isn't it?
But maybe he sounded like the hillbilly from Tennessee rather than...
Anyway. It's all there,
maybe he's from New Jersey.
Not wanting people to think any less of you, so you...
Yes, isn't that interesting?
Right there in that account.
Key thing here is they get their artillery, forward observers quickly. It is artillery, which is that is the biggest fist that the Americans, the Allies, can deliver onto the enemy at any one time. Your infantry are there to actually physically take the ground, but the enablers are the artillery. It's firepower, 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 every stretch of the way. The moment you get your artillery forward observers there, whether you be at the Lausdal crossroads in the Battle of the Bulge, or whether you be crossing the River Rhine, life gets easier for the doughboys up at the front. That is the truth of it.
The Americans have perfected combined arms by this point.
Yes, they have. Exactly. So what we're talking about here is we've got forward observers, we've got engineers, we've got infantry going across in their storm boats very quickly, followed by the 737th Tank Battalion, the 403rd Tank Destroyer Battalion, and that changes everything. So by 5 a.m. on the 23rd of March, the following morning, 2 regiments are across. So that's 3 battalions of infantry times 2. So that's 6 battalions. The first ferry's working and Higgins boats are scuttling back and forth with ever heavier equipment, anti-tank guns and all the rest of it, and bazookas and so on. Then the German artillery starts becoming more accurate, and the infantry then discovered an intact German bunker with 70 men directing the artillery. So that makes life a little bit easier.
By late morning, 5th Div, they've got a bridgehead that's 7 miles wide, 6 miles deep.
I mean, that's a big bridgehead.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good, isn't it? You compare that to efforts on D-Day, for instance. Although
that means you've secured the far bank and you haven't got anything to worry about anymore.
Yeah. And yes, because you can bring guns over that can fire at range without.
Yeah, and your engineers can make those bridges.
Eddie gets artillery into the bridgehead, ready for a counterattack. But by midnight of the 23rd. He has 17 artillery.
17 artillery battalions. And you cannot tell me that hasn't been worked out beforehand because of course it has, because otherwise the artillery wouldn't be in position to be ferried over quickly. It is not an easy job moving on 105. It's certainly not easy moving anything larger.
Well, that means it's ammunition, of course. Their ammunition too as well. There's no point moving them over. And there's an officer candidate school nearby at Wiesbaden, but they do the right thing and surrender swiftly. So that's that. And within 20 hours, there's a bridge capable of taking tanks across the Rhine. The Luftwaffe try attacking on the 24th.
But they're all a bit crap by this point. They don't know how to fly anything. They'll get shot down.
The Americans are now officially across the Rhine. Ahead of schedule, but according to plan is what it comes down to, doesn't it, really?
Yeah, exactly. Between the 24th and the 31st of March, 60,000 vehicles get across.
I'm wondering whether we could get George Patton to do something about Hammersmith Bridge. Because it's been closed for 5 years now, 6 years.
Yes. It's absolutely crazy, isn't it?
It's described as improvised, but it ain't. I think we've made that pretty clear. Then Middleton's 8th Corps on the night of the 24th get across 12 miles uprim from Koblenz. Golden Acorns, the 87th to get across. I mean, this is Ike's plan, isn't it? That you have crossings going on all over.
You hammer them all at once, and then you don't, and they've
Germans don't know which way to turn.
Exactly, exactly. Which is why you don't want isolated crossings.
Yeah.
I'm sorry with Ike on this.
By the 2nd of April, 87th and 89th divisions have cleared the area between Koblenz and Wiesbaden. Just a 50-mile front, taking 30,000 POWs. And then Patton's 3rd Corps, 20 Corps, they cross at 1 o'clock on the 28th at Kastel and Kostheim. But, that's a success too. And
they have a little bit of luck.
Yeah. Patton crosses at Neerstein on the 27th of March. And because he's a really grown-up person, Patton, famous for his being a great big grown-up, he has a short halt. Time for a short halt. Has a slash into the river.
A slash.
I've been looking forward to this for a long time. He says.
And it's photographed.
Yes, because none of this is happening by accident. He's got his.
Yes.
You don't. If you're Patton, you don't take a pee in the river and no one photographs it.
Where's the fun in that?
Work it out. Work out who he is and how he operates, everybody. Anyway, The Americans are across the river, not just spontaneously as at Remagen, but officially with Third Army. And now, in the next part, which we'll take a very short break for, we come back with Monty's plan. Welcome back to Way of Ways That Make You Talk. It's the victory in Europe is approaching, ladies and gentlemen, but you've got to get across the Rhine. And as we've seen...
We're finally coming to the main event, which is really exciting.
Yes, the Americans are across the Rhine successfully and entirely in premeditated form. But now we come to Field Marshal
we've all been waiting for.
Yeah, I know. Let's be honest now.
Go on, let's face it.
So in early March, Monty writes to his son, David, who's looked after... he's been a terrible dad during the war. I'm busy getting ready for the next battle. The wine is some wither, but we shall get over it.
Yours, Field Marshal Montgomery.
I don't think there's any lots of love. It's basically, I will get over the Rhine and you will get over the way I've brought you up. I think it's the implication. Yes. But I mean, so the main effort, synchronized effort, is going to be the north, because it's an ideal place for it.
Well, it's close to Berlin and, close to the north.
Well, and Wesel is also one of the mooted sites for Market Garden when they're looking for places to cross the river, to cross the Rhine.
Yes, it is.
And it's written off as too difficult.
So inevitably, this being Monty, there are a couple of iterations of this plan.
Yep.
And the original plan calls upon only the British Second Army to cross, and in 3 places. So first of all at Ries, which is the northernmost spot, which is 25 miles upstream from Arnhem. Then at Xanten, which is 7 miles further upstream and really close to Wesel. And then at Rheinberg, which is a further 60 miles on. Yeah. So in the original plan, there's absolutely no place for the Canadians or Simpson's 9th Army, who, as you remember, was trying to get across at Erdogan prematurely, and which is still attached to the 21st Army Group. And both Harry Crerar, who's the Canadian Army commander, and Bill Simpson are really put out about this. They want to be in on the action. Yeah, and want to be across. I'm sure their men don't feel quite the same way. Yes. I'm quite happy to say this one out, don't worry. And I suppose it is something coming from Simpson, because Simpson's been such a brilliant diplomat. He's gone on very well with Monty. I think they do actually get on. I don't think this is something that's been particularly forced by Simpson. I think he just finds Monty less annoying than the others, but he does feel that his 9th Army should be a part of this, not least because they've been kind of chomping at the bit to get across for a couple of weeks now. Yeah. So there's a bit of back and forth, and then Monty agrees to include the 9th Army in the initial assault, and also to add the Canadian 9th Brigade, which is also going to be followed up by, I think, the 3rd Brigade, if I remember rightly. And the 9th Brigade, of course, are Normandy veterans. So 2nd Army sticks with the crossings at Ries and near Wesel, while the 9th Army takes over the Rheinberg area crossing. 2nd Army with the Canadians attached is going to be called Operation Plunder. The whole operation is going to be called Operation Plunder with little sub-operation names in between it. Yeah. And it's going to involve 1.2 million men compared to the 320,000 in 3rd Army. And it's going to be the largest number of men under British commander and the largest river assault ever made at that point. Yeah. In the planning. Yeah. Yeah. And it's a, Monty style. So it's a great big set piece. Why risk it?
Belt and braces. Why risk it? Why risk it?
Yeah.
It is after all the great.
You don't know. You don't know it's going to be.
No, and it's the great German front. It's the great German frontier. Historically, it always has been. This is a psychological barrier that you're crossing far more than the Siegfried Line, the West or the West Wall, isn't it? In Germany, no two ways about it. So
yeah, and it's 400 yards wide at this point. I've been to the crossing points at Rhine and Wesel, and I can tell you, it looks freaking enormous when you're there.
It certainly does, doesn't it? Yeah,
it really, really does. Because you know how big it is at the Waal, where the 504th go across at Nijmegen. It's bigger than that. It's flat either side. There's these sort of dikes each side. Rhine is sort of just to the south, to the right hand side of the main crossing points. You don't want to go straight into a village. Or a town. You want to go where there's sort of clear space. But the Germans do have quite a considerable amount of fortifications along there. They've got bunkers and concrete and minefields and all the rest of it. And on paper there's and you're defending the Third Reich. You're now really defending the Third Reich. So there's every suggestion that caution is a better pass of valor, and it's better to overestimate your enemy's strength and then be pleasantly surprised, and underestimate it and then be caught on the hop.
Well, and also you're coming to the end of the war, and you must know that your men are thinking, I don't want to die at this phase now.
Right, and you're got all this ordnance, you've got all this equipment, flipping well use it.
Yeah. I mean, no one wants to die at any point, obviously, but there is this thing, isn't there, as it's coming towards the end. Where you're thinking, well, so of course you load the dice. Of course. I mean, I don't understand why anyone could possibly be critical of this. So there are enormous stockpiles of ammo, and they've been preparing for this even as they're clearing out
that sort of hinterland of I suppose that is still the Palatinate, isn't it, up there?
Yeah. 60,000 tons of ammunition, 30,000 tons of bridging equipment and other sapping stuff, 28,000 tons of extra daily supplies. So 9th Army has got 138,000 tons stockpiled as well. There's 37,000 British sappers, Royal Engineers. I mean, blimey, 22,000 American plus, and then there's 5,500 artillery pieces. It's got to be too big to fail, which after all is the attitude on D-Day, isn't it? As well, and the other thing is the weather's only going to get better. So if you delay a little, if you're doing it late, all these things are in your favour for taking your time and getting it right.
Yes.
If you're off balance, you're vulnerable to a thing like the bulge happening, is what they must be thinking as well. There's new troops too, because that's the other thing. Is you've got a load of new people coming through because infantry casualties in particular have been so high. Monty's also operating on this principle of not asking too much people for fear of damaging their morale, which is his command style.
Which is ditto a good thing. So there's a 66-mile long smoke screen along the west side of the river to hide the preparations. I mean, some might say that's over the top, but I just say that's sensible.
Sounds pretty reasonable to me.
Do you want to read Major John Graham,
yes, absolutely.
Company Commander in the 2nd Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders?
He might well be in the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders, but in an absolute talk like this, our men were not sufficiently well trained at this stage of the campaign to be able to exploit against a professional soldier in a hasty, impromptu crossing. We couldn't overcome the shortage of leaders. By that time in the war, the experienced corporals and sergeants had disappeared. It still seems absurd that I was 21 and a major. I think it would have been a pretty unwise commander who launched them into battle without the most thorough preparations. And this is the point.
Absolutely the point.
But when Monty takes command of 8th Army, this is the thing he says to himself: I can't ask things of 8th Army that I know that I'm not confident it can pull off. The key difference, though, is his method and his staff's method and the army method. That's all been shaken down, hasn't it? They know what they're doing operationally now. It's the fact that the guys who've got to cross the start line, you need to take care of them as well. And they're not who you had 6 months ago.
Exactly. So the plan is to send 2 British divisions, the 51st Highland and 15th Scottish. And you may remember that the 15th Scottish were the ones who launched the attack in British 8 Corps to start Epsom, Operation Epsom, on the 26th of Monday, the 26th of June, 1944 in Normandy.
Going through the first cornfield.
All of that.
Yep.
And they're going to cross at Rhine and Wesel, and they're going to be reinforced by the Canadian 9th Brigade. So Operation Turnscrew is going to be the crossing at Rhine, and Operation Torchlight at Xanten near Wesel. So the plan was for Turnscrew, Reese, to go in first at 9 p.m. on the 23rd of March with Major General Tom Rennie's Highlanders and the Canadian 9th Brigade. And then as soon as they're successfully over, they would be reinforced by the 43rd Wessex, also including 8th Armoured Independent Brigade, or Independent Armoured Brigade. And then the 3rd Division and the Guards Armoured Division are there to do the exploitation afterwards.
Yeah.
And it was after that you had the Sherwood Rangers going, don't knock your paint.
That's right. Yeah. Then an hour later, after Turnscrew, Operation Widgeon. What is a widgeon? Is that
It's like a little duck.
So it's sort of an aquatic pigeon. Operation Widgeon is launched. That's the first.
No, I think it's a duck.
Yeah, but if it's a widgeon, it's like I'm trying to say it's a kind of swimming.
A water-based pigeon.
It's a water-based pigeon, a widgeon. Anyway,
it doesn't look like a pigeon.
Well, it's been in the water a long time. First Commando Brigade.
Good game bird.
So that's Commandos. So that's First Commando Brigade. And they do a silent crossing. So another surprise crossing. There has been a massive air raid, though. So it's not like...
No, well, the air raid is that night.
Well, there will have been a massive air raid.
There will be, yeah. So they get across north of Vaisal, and they're crossing, and then they're primed to take out Vaisal. Then there will be the huge bombardment and air raid with bombers coming over and flattening Vaisal, and then once it's been flattened, then they go in and take it.
Yeah.
But that's all on that first night. That's what's happening there.
And the whole thing's in phases and staggered. So then at 2 o'clock on the 24th, 2 in the morning, 15th Scottish will cross the Rhine at Xanten, midway between the two towns of Vaisal and Reese. This is Torchlight, Operation Torchlight. And 15th Scottish are commanded by Major General Tiny Barber, who I'm happy to tell listeners is 6'6" tall, because it's the British Army.
Of course, he's really tall, Tiny.
So they call him Tiny. They're going to stick up a Bailey Bridge as well across the river, which is amazing.
Yes.
And then 11th
Class 40
Armoured.
Bailey Bridge.
Yeah, and then over go 11th Armoured to exploit. Then the following morning, 2 airborne divisions, 6th and 17th US Airborne Division, 6th British Airborne Division, 17th US Airborne Division, will land to stifle the German guns, is the idea.
And that's going to come in at sort of 10 a.m. on the 24th. Yeah. But we're going to keep our powder dry for that one, because that is the treat for episode 3.
Yes. And then finally, Simpson's men cross an 11-mile sector south of Vaisal called Flashpoint on the early hours of the 24th of March. Lots of phases, loads going on.
With careful planning.
Tons of careful planning, because, it's a war.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
oh my God! Honestly, it riles me so much that he gets criticism for being careful in his planning.
What state are the Germans in the other side of this river, though?
Pretty bad. Yeah. So there's the first Fallschirmjäger army under General Alfred Schlemm. Schlemm had a Fallschirmjäger corps in Italy. So it was his corps that was responsible for the Marzabotto massacre, for example. The whole thing was authorized and organized by First Fallschirmjäger Corps under Schlemm. Anyway, he's not in Italy anymore. He's now over here. Schlemm's Fallschirmjäger army is directly opposite where the planned crossings are. And despite deception measures, Schlemm correctly predicts the crossing points at Reese and is not far out at Wiesel either. So obviously he can reinforce those bits, which he does. He also predicts an airborne assault, which is not really surprising because he's an airborne Fallschirmjäger officer.
But also, it's all pretty obvious.
Leads itself to it, doesn't it? Yeah. So what Schlemm does is he increases the flak defences, the anti-aircraft defences near Vaisal, has 814 heavy and light flak guns, and also mobile anti-airborne units covering all the likely drop zones. And he also orders his gunners to sleep fully clothed and to be ready at all times. So he's expecting it, basically. Yeah. At Vaisal is General Major Erich Strauber's 86th Corps, 2 Fallschirmjäger Corps, which amounts to somewhere between 10 and 12,000 men. When you consider that a full-strength division is supposed to be, 15 to 17,000 men in 2 entire corps, which is multiple divisions, they've only got no more than 12,000 men. Yes. You can see how depleted they are.
This is how reduced
they are. So Schlemm has also got some armour to call on. He's got the 47th Panzer Corps. Remember them from Bulge and Bastogne and all that? Still under General Lieutenant Freiherr Heinrich von Luttwitz. And with the 116th Panzer Division from Normandy and from the Bulge and all the rest of it, and 15 Panzer Grenadier Division, who were also in Italy and Sicily, and before they got moved over to the Battle of the Bulge and the Bastogne Battle.
But the thing is, that sounds like
a lot,
but it ain't.
No. How many tanks they got between them?
It's 35, isn't it?
It's not great, is it?
Anyway, there's a Volkssturm Division in reserve as well, and a new Werwolf units.
So the Volkssturm are the new, these are the new home guard, 16 to 60, and mostly 16 or 60. And so they're not much cop, undertrained, under-equipped, all the rest of it. But overall, despite the bunkers, despite the kind of the corps and all the rest of it, and army groups and armies and all the rest of it, this is pretty weak. The defence is under strength. Allied air forces are making their lives an absolute misery. They completely dominate the skies. The morale is dreadful. There's no real carrot on offer, so instead they mainly use a stick. Threat of the Russians coming in and terrorising them all, and of course the threat of the death penalty, which grows, and we'll deal with this a little bit more in a further episode. But on February the 12th, Field Marshal Wilhelm Keitel, who's Chief of Staff of the Oberkommando der Wehrmacht, which is the German General Staff, issues an order warning. Any officer who aids a subordinate to leave the combat zone unlawfully by carelessly issuing him a pass or other leave papers citing a simulated reason is to be considered a saboteur and will suffer death.
Don't go and see your lieutenant about your ingrown toenail. He's not going to let you.
Yeah, and actually Blaskowitz made it even more clear. He also sent out a note saying basically anyone will be shot or hanged.
I mean, the British and the Americans are still building up supplies. There's 250,000 tons of supplies. 30 Corps alone has 8,000 sappers, 22,000 tons of bridging, 25,000 wooden pontoons, 2,000 assault boats, 650 storm boats, 120 river tugs, 80 miles of balloon cable. Wartime efficiency. This is one of those occasions of when people say, wartime efficiency. No, this is about waste. This is about redundancy. This is about having the wriggle room to.
It's the Rhine, people, and it's the Third Reich.
Yeah, exactly. And they're using Buffaloes, which is the amphibious
version of the LVT, the landing vehicle tracked.
Yeah.
Amtraks, as they're also called.
Yeah, which is
amphibious tractors.
Yes, sort of wedge-shaped or prism-shaped.
Well, they sort of look a little bit like a First World War tank, don't they?
US 9th Army, they're expecting to chuck up a 1,150-foot treadway in just 9 hours.
So Samuel Alexander Flatt of Royal Canadian Engineers say, the usual Hollywood words such as colossal, stupendous and unbelievable would have been of little use in describing the situation as seen here. Nothing had been left to chance, and a timetable had been worked out that reminded us of the detailed planning for the D-Day assault.
And there's no shortage of air support either. That's the other thing. I mean, because at the moment, we've been working in 2 dimensions here, and now here's the 3rd dimension, tactical and strategic air resources. So the RAF and the USAF start basically strangling the Ruhr in February. They're blowing up bridges on the main routes leading to the area. 617, and we talked about this the other day about precision bombing as well as the sort of area bombing. They attacked the Bielefeld Railway Viaduct with a Grand Slam bomb. It's the earthquake bomb, 22,000 pound bomb. They're isolating like they did in Normandy. And on the 22nd of March, Schlemm's headquarters is raided. So he's badly wounded, forced out of the battle. And he's replaced by General Gunther Blumentritt, who we've come across before. Each one of these things, if you factor it, you can feel the inevitability of the end of the war if you're looking at it from this point of view, really, can't you? Just the sheer overwhelming power of it. And this is at a phase of the war. I mean, this is the phase of the war where the British are regarded as kind of as a junior partner now, but there's nothing junior about this, is there? At all?
No, none at all.
So there's last minute training. 5th Black Watch do an exercise in Buffaloes. They get lost in the fog, which actually is pretty, realistic given the enormous smoke screen across the Rhine. 44th Royal Tank Regiment, they're given DD Shermans, but they haven't used them. So they then have to go under 10 days of intense training. And Brigadier Derek Mills Roberts is worried about the storm boats. He thinks they're useless.
He's in command of the Commando Brigade.
Yeah, so he takes Dempsey for a ride in one, and it breaks down, and the army commander ends up adrift. I mean, it's very interesting, all this just testing stuff. Security's
Well, these storm boats are new, and the problem with storm boats is they're low. They don't have a high side. They're designed for 10 men. But they're 10 men who are incredibly laden. So by the time everyone gets into them, you're people are going at the front to start off with, and if you don't load up properly, the front just disappears in the water. The whole thing sinks. So they require quite careful loading, and then they've got this little 55 horsepower outboard on. I mean, it's just exactly, and you can see how they all go wrong because the engines get swamped with water and. It's just what they really need to do is go, okay, we're only going to have 6 men in, but then that would just completely wreck the entire plan.
And absolutely every single one of those commandos is carrying 4 more grenades than he's been told to. And two more.
And another extra clips of Bren magazine.
Yeah, two more clips of Bren ammo and a pickaxe. You know, this is the fact. The facts. Of and
the sensible ones are not carrying their packs when they get into the boat.
Yeah,
they're carrying them. They're not on their shoulders. And there's a case where one goes in and they get sunk and they just get drowned. Yeah, they're carrying 60 pounds on their back.
So security is very tight. 9th Army remove the shoulder patches and unit IDs on vehicles are painted over. You also have the airborne land tail. The people who can't arrive, they turned their berets inside out, so they're all in disguise. So they aren't giving away their maroon berets. Although, as we pointed out, the Germans have already figured out it's coming. By the 22nd of March, the Germans have 3,411 artillery pieces on standby. That's in contrast to how many at Alamein, Jim? 874. And the Americans have 2,070 guns ready to go.
So between them, they've got 5,500.
Yeah. And the code words for launch,
huge amount,
an enormous number of tubes.
I mean, even before the start of Diadem, the battle for Rome, where they got two entire armies side by side, you've only got 1,600 guns.
And the code words for launching the battle are 2 if by sea. 2, number 2, if by sea. And we will be coming back in our next episode, issuing those code words, and the crossing will commence.
The crossing will commence.
And we'll start with Operation Widgeon, the aquatic pigeon of so
if you want to know what happens, you want to know how plunder is enacted and what happens with Operation Varsity, the airborne drop, be sure to tune in to episode 3.
Tune in to episode 3. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. Episodes 3 and 4 are available for members early if you're a member of our officer class. We will return in our next episode with the immortal words 2 if by sea. See you then. Bye-bye.
Cheerio.
Hello, I'm James Holland.
And I'm Al Murray. We're excited to bring you our brand new book, Victory 45, The End of the War in 8 Surrenders.
From the Italian Alps to New York to Tokyo, we cover how one summer forever changed the course of history.
Victory 45 in hardback, ebook, and audiobook.